All right. Welcome to Author Showcase and Book Fair Tour with 11 amazing, wonderful female authors. Welcome. Today, we're going to start with Tyrese Harris. Go ahead, Tyrese. You on mute.
Hi there, Tyrese Harrison, and I'm from New Orleans. Wrote my first book called Bitch Hunt. This is a copy of it, and then you can see it in my background. There's also a little bookmark that I also have for the book. I'm an attorney by day, author by night. This is my first book I wrote. It took me about 2 years to write this book. This is my first book. The book has came out in June of this year. It's about 5 Black female attorneys. In the book, it's a nonfiction book. So in the book, I talk about how Black women are attacked because of who they are or because of who people perceive them to be. It deals with racism, it deals with sexism, and it deals with colorism. And so each one of the parties that's in the book is a Black female attorney, or they could be a judge as well. And so I take you through each one of their stories of how basically they're being treated differently because of their skin color. I'm in chapter 1, so you get to hear my story, which is what brought me to write Bitch Hunt. And it took me about 2 years to write the book, and I'm actually in the process of writing my second book. The second book is going to be called The Wrinkle Road, and I'm going to be talking about corrupt judges in the New Orleans metro area. That's me. I can't. You on mute.
I'm sorry. What is the message you're trying to convey in your book?
The message I'm trying to convey is to stand up for yourself. Don't let anyone stand up in your truth and be true to yourself, and don't let anybody bully you. And that's even more prevalent right now. The book just came out at the perfect time because we're dealing with Black Lives Matter. Really, we always been dealing with Black Lives Matter. So this book speaks directly to the issues we're currently dealing in the United States right now and have been dealing with. But this gives you a highlight, even at a professional level, of how people are still dealing with it. Even with all the degrees that I have, I still deal with being discriminated against or dealing with racism, sexism, and colorism on a daily basis.
Okay. And what was your goal for writing this book?
My goal was to get my story out, but I also wanted to get out other women's stories that was similar. Just to give you a little bit of my story, I was arrested because I was falsely arrested. I was at my car taking care. My car had been incapacitated because my parking had expired, so I had a boot on my car. And I was in the process of taking care of that. A stranger snuck up on me. And so this whole situation ensues between us where I'm telling him to leave me alone. He won't leave me alone. At some point, I tell him that I'm a concealed carrier, so I have my firearm with me. He kind of leaves, and I'm able to leave. Unknown to me, he calls the police and tells the police I pointed a firearm at him. And then 2 weeks later, I get arrested, and I take everyone through that story. And so I try to find other women who basically kind of dealt with something that was similar to mine, and that's how I get to my book.
Okay. Would you like to read a snippet from your book?
Sure. After an all-day legal seminar ended, I came out to find my car booted. While I was on the phone to get someone out to remove the boot from my car, I noticed a man across the street walking toward me, but I thought little of it. But while on the phone, I got an eerie feeling like I was being watched. I turned around, and the man, who had been walking on the opposite side of the street, was now so close that he could have kissed me. The man was about my height, dressed in all Black clothing, including the backpack he was carrying. His clothes were filthy, and I assumed that he was homeless. I was startled by his strange behavior, but I remained calm. Although in my mind, I was screaming, I thought of various scenarios, but I knew it was best not to appear frightened of the man or his actions.
Okay, thank you. And where can we find you and your books?
So you can find Bitch Hunt on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and all of the places where books are available.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Next, we have Jamila Smith. Tell us about yourself, your books, and where we can find you and your books.
Hello, I'm Jamila D. Smith. I write contemporary fiction full-time, and I'm an ESL elementary teacher, which stands for English as a Second Language. So I work with students whose parents are immigrants from other countries. And then in addition to that, I write contemporary fiction, as I said. I have 3 books. My first one is Sprouting Seeds. That's about a great-grandmother telling a life history to her great-granddaughter. And it's depicted in Louisiana. Her name is Cora. And then I have Runaways. That's like a teen version of Set It Off and Girl Interrupted. So we have 4 teenage girls escaping a group home facility, and it's depicted in California. And then I just sold my 3rd book, but it's called Cindy. And Cindy is right here, where the girl's sitting on the couch. That's a girl who's raised in foster care. The story's depicted in Brooklyn, New York. And her story just takes you through the trials and tribulations she encountered from childhood to young adulthood. I have Sprouting Seeds in paperback as well as audio. So you get 4 discs all in one package. And Runaways is currently being adapted into audio as well. And I also coordinate fashion events. So I pretty much plan the event, find the venue, and recruit the models, and then pretty much recruit the talent and get the show off the ground as well. So I have a project that I'm currently working on as well. Hopefully that should be surfacing within a month or so. You can find my books on my website. I don't know if you can see, it's Jamila D. Smith at .weebly.com. And then here's my other site, jdsmodels.weebly.com. And then that's my Cash App, Jamila D. Smith 29. And I write contemporary fiction.
Okay. Where do your characters come from?
I created Cora from Sprouting Seeds. I created her when I went to an after-school training program. I used to tutor elementary students, and I used to tutor Spanish. So we were listening to a story called Chicken Sunday about a girl sharing memories of her grandmother cooking chicken every Sunday night. So that's how I came up with Sprouting Seeds. And then I created this characters in Runaways. I used to like watching stories where I would see pretty much kids who would rebel but get away with it. And I know it sounds twisted, but I wanted to write a story that was relatable to others as well, and show how they can conquer the system despite the odds that are against them.
Okay, what inspired you to write Runaways?
I wrote Runaways because I like stories where there's rebellion, because that's the truth. I mean, we have that sometimes with our youth. They encounter like social concerns that they can't share with adult authority members or just with other peers. So I wanted to write something that was honest and edgy, and yet that could be an awareness for adults, so that if they have trouble connecting with the youth, they'll know what strategies to use and what's helpful.
Okay. Would you like to read from one of your books, a snippet?
Sure thing. I'll read Runaways. People seem to enjoy that the most. So I'm going to share an excerpt where there are 4 characters, and the lead character is Rihanna. She's like the Cleo from Set It Off. So this is the part where they're trying to escape the facility. Rihanna dropped to the floor on all 4s and began to crawl inside the office. She crawled in front of the desk, ready to where he sat. The wooden floorboards creaked loudly under her 115-pound slender frame, but that didn't stop her. Mr. Thompson grunted deeply in his sleep a couple of times and occasionally shouted out a couple of profanities until he returned to his deep snore. For a moment, Rihanna thought he jolted awake when his heavy hand fell to the side of the chair. It was 2 inches from her face, and she needed to get in that drawer that was right in front of him. It was slightly open, but the cash was locked shut inside a box. Rihanna slowly opened the drawer, keeping her eye on Mr. Thompson. All it took was for him to open his right eye, and they would have instantly made eye contact. The girls in the hallway waited anxiously. What if Mr. Bruno had come to from his knockout? Then he would charge down the stairs and their plan would surely crumble. Rihanna fumbled with the combination, hoping that it was right. Once she opened the box, she discovered another blessing. She found another credit card wrapped inside an envelope with a PIN number written on a receipt paper that was paperclipped to it. She snatched it up and cleaned out the entire box, grabbing a box cutter and screwdriver before shutting the safe. The facility had more than $400 of petty cash. Rihanna took every penny. Coming in was easy, yet going out was hard. She had to crawl out backwards so that she could keep her eye on Mr. Thompson. She was halfway out of the office when her right leg accidentally bumped against a cardboard box. It was stuffed with archived files. Fortunately, Mr. Thompson didn't wake up. She crawled out with the credit card between her teeth and tucked the petty cash envelope in the front part of her jeans. Rihanna made it out and the girls would triumph. "Let's go," Rihanna whispered once she accomplished her mission. Sherry remained terrified as they continued to threaten her. "You'll remember me, witch," Rihanna said, cutting off a lock of Sherry's hair. "Later, chick," Amy said, walking out with Angel psychotically. "Please don't take my hamster, please," Sherry pleaded. "Consider this a souvenir you owe us for talking smack," Melanie said, continuing to press the pencil at her neck. And that's Runaways.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Miss Wilma. Miller, can you please tell us about yourself and your books? Miss Wilma, you're on mute.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my name is Wilma Jane Miller, and I grew up in Newport, Arkansas. And I attended W.F. Branch High School, and then I went to college, Arkansas Baptist College. And I was raised by my great uncle and aunt. And then after I went to college, about 6 months later, I married my husband, Raymond J. Miller, who I met in college. And that's the picture of my growing up. And I have 2 books. One I wrote in 2016. It's called Mama's Home Cooking. And in this book, it's more than just a cookbook. It has so much other good advice that you can go to. Like with this coronavirus that we got going on, how to keep a well-stocked kitchen. And if you keep some things, flour, sugar, cornmeal, salt, pepper, rice, beans, chili powder, milk, eggs, oil, and some type of meat can be frozen, canned meat, tuna, spam, chicken, and viennas. You can always pull a good meal out of your hat. So you quarantine for 14 days and you can't leave the house. There's also good things to keep in case we live where there's a lot of snow and stuff and we can't get out. And it's also a good book. It's got a lot of good advices and tips in there about if you're lonely or depressed or if you need God in your life, what verses to go to find help. And you might say, why would I buy your cookbook? Say you're a new beginner person and you don't know how to cook. This book will give you good ways to cook on a low budget, don't have a whole lot of money, and you can learn how to cook. And say you think you already know how to cook. Well, my book will tell you You can read my book and get some advice or new ideas of preparing book. And what I really like cooking mostly, I love to cook, turkey and dressing. Why I like cooking turkey and dressing is because when I make the stuffing for the dressing, I always make more than I need. And I freeze a certain portion of that because the stuffing that you make, you can later on use it to make casserole. You want to make a vegetable casserole, you can squash, add cheese and extra eggs to it, and you got your casserole. Or you can use zucchini or any other vegetable besides you want to add to it. And we all know what a turkey would do. You could use you can serve it that day, slice, carve it, whatever. The leftover carcass make wonderful soup. You know, that bone is what we really do need to get that flavor in there. And you can also make sandwiches out of it, and also add it to casseroles. And my favorite dessert, let's see, I like making pound cakes, peach cobblers. I'm just basically a good old down home Southern cook. And I get compliments all the time. That's really what kind of like inspired me to make this cookbook. No, Raymond's the one, my son Raymond, he's the one that inspired me to do this cooking. He always would brag on me, when he was in college, about what a good cook his mom was. He would tell his colleagues, oh, my mama, she can cook dirt and make it taste good. And so with him bragging on me and my neighbors and friends, they bragging on me and always calling me for advice over how to cook this and how to cook the other. And I always know it made me feel special, like I really did know something, that I was wiser. Even some that I live in a senior citizen place, retirement center, and I've got neighbors that's in their 90s, I'm in my 70s, and they brag on my cooking. They ask me advice how to cook this and how to cook that. Oh, I am. Why I gotta tell you how to cook? Don't you already know this? I have neighbors that never eaten turnip greens. They don't know how to cook. Don't know how to cook green. How can you live to get 90 and don't know how to cook green? And and another thing inspired me to cook was my husband. He was a big eater. He loved to eat. He was like 6'5", and when we got married, he was 6'5", weighed 285 pounds, and I weighed 95. And he just loved my cooking. And I would ask him, honey, how does this taste? That's my pet name from Honey. And I said, honey, how does this taste? He was always good. Only one thing, you didn't make enough. And so I had to literally go out and buy some extra pots and pans. I received these pots and pans when we got married for, 2 people. But that wasn't good enough. And then I had to go out and buy some more. And his mother was a good cook. She worked for the school system. And honey, I don't care if it is your mama, ain't nobody gonna cook better than I cook for my husband. And so it's just inspiration inspired me to keep on. And I just love putting flavors together and seeing what they come out to be. So that's about me and my book.
Okay, what about your holiday book?
Oh, my holiday book. That's book 2. All right. And this is called Mama's Home Cooking, Home for the Holidays. And in this book, you Home for the Holidays, it started with New Year's, what to cook for New Year's. Now, we all Southern folks, us Black people, we love us some traditional black-eyed peas. I got a black-eyed pea recipe in here, black-eyed pea cornbread, and the chitlins and the crackling cornbread also in here that you put for the New Year's. We got Thanksgiving. We know we like that turkey and dressing, and what to cook it, what side to go with it. Easter, we like the ham, how to prepare a ham. So we surprised people don't know how to prepare a ham and what to go with it. So each holiday has not only the meat to cook with it, but the sides to go with it, and also have the hors d'oeuvre to serve while you're waiting on the meal to be cooked.
Okay. I have two questions. What is your favorite holiday meal to cook and why?
Again, I like the Thanksgiving. We're going back to the bird, that turkey, and so many things that you can do with the leftovers after Thanksgiving.
Okay. And have you ever thought about doing a cooking class?
Yes, I do, but the place that I'm in, it's a senior citizen retirement place, and I have like dormitory spaces. And the church that I attend, it's not real monitored to do a cooking class. So I don't have the means or the source or know where to go to do the cooking class.
Can you tell us where to find your books?
You can find my book at WilmaJeanMiller.com at Amazon, or you can find it Wilma Jean Miller 44 at Wilma Jean Miller 44 at gmail.com.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Wilma.
All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, Catherine, you're next. Tell us about yourself, your books, and where we can find you in your books.
Aloha. As you can tell, I'm in Honolulu. I'm an attorney like Tetrice, and I know that a lot of you are a little bit bored being at home and that you would love to travel, especially to Oahu, to Maui, to Kauai. And we would love to have you here, but that darn COVID that keeps you away. But one way you can travel is by reading. And you can transport yourself to Hawaii by reading my books. I actually wrote a series. It's a legal mystery series. And the first book is Land Sharks. And the subtitle kind of tells you a lot about it. Hashtag Honolulu Law, hashtag triathletes, and a hashtag TV star. And the second book is Free Will. And that's hashtag Honolulu Law, hashtag famous triathlete, and a hashtag charity. And the third book is VO2 Max. And that's hashtag Honolulu Law, hashtag pro athletes, and a hashtag sports agent. But what's interesting is that I started writing Land Sharks in 2009, and it wasn't published until 2016. It took a long time to learn how to write a novel. I had published a textbook on sports risk management before. However, writing a novel was different, and I had a writers group. And at the beginning of the writers group that we started in 2009, I voted myself least likely to actually publish a novel or finish a novel. Turned out that I've published 3, and my fellow writers that were still together, one published 1. So I surprised myself. And the kind of the inspiration for Land Sharks was laziness. I wrote what I knew, which was being a lawyer and working in a firm and being kind of sexually harassed. And also, I liked, I like reality TV shows and stuff, and I was inspired by Hawaii Five-0. So I put a gorgeous guy that happens to be an attorney by day and a TV show by night. I mean, TV star by night. He's kind of a fun, cute, gorgeous guy, Jerry Hirano. And my protagonist, Zayna West, is a young attorney in this firm, and she's totally sexually harassed, but she's really tough, and she kind of charges through everything. And Jerry and Zayna are in all of the books, and it's kind of goes through their love story a bit, but with the adventures of a lawsuit. And to make it more real, I didn't want to have a trial type book, because in reality, lawyers don't really go to trial that often unless you're like a public defender or a prosecutor. most lawyers go to arbitration, mediation, we go to depositions if we're a litigator, but we really don't go to trial. We settle our cases. So all of my cases are pre-trial. I don't have trials. They might have motions or depositions, but there's a lot of action, a lot of fun. They're kind of funny, and they're really airport reads or beach reads, because I wanted to bring my writing to everyone and make them really accessible.
Okay. Would you like to read from one of your books?
Absolutely. The third book was inspired by homeless in Hawaii, because when I first moved here in 1988, I noticed that there was a big homeless problem and it never changed. And the state would come and take away people's, you know, the homeless, they would come in and do homeless sweeps and take all of their possessions away. So this is a rags to riches story, and it starts with that kind of scene. And it's Haley is one of the main characters, and she is homeless with her boyfriend, and they're in the park, and she has to go to the bathroom, and he's at a job interview. When she reached the restrooms, she drank to quench her thirst and then filled the 2 water bottles she brought with her. While she waited in line, Haley heard some shouting and sounds of trucks in the distance, but thought nothing of it. The park had its share of crazy people who wakened at night with their screaming and loud chatter. After finally taking her turn in the grubby bathroom stall, she again drank from the fountain before heading back. As Haley walked across the street, she didn't see their tent where she had left it. That was odd. Shaking her head in disbelief, she sprinted towards the palm trees where Sean had tied a line across to hang wet clothes. The tent was gone. All their belongings gone. The only thing left was her pink t-shirt blowing in the breeze on the line. Haley grabbed the shirt. Oh my God. She scanned the park, searching all corners of it, the other tents, filled to the brim shopping carts, and tattered rolling suitcases that had littered the park only 20 minutes before were also gone. She then heard the rumbling of a large truck in the distance near the Honolulu Zoo. They got your stuff too? A man with a toothless smile said. Haley could only nod. She felt sick, like her insides were going to burst.
Okay, what inspired you to write novels about sports, and do you think you'll ever write in another genre?
Actually, I am already writing in other genres. I was a triathlete for quite a few years and ran a lot of races. And then when you get old, you can't do that anymore. So you write. And now I actually have another book that's supposed to be published soon, and it's called Zayna West's Diary. It's kind of like Zayna West's childhood. She had a really tough childhood, and she was in foster homes. So that's a YA book, a young adult book. But now I'm kind of writing new adult. I think my voice is more in the new adult or young adult, because I guess I'm a little immature. So that I fit that really well.
Okay, can you tell us about Claim Crazy Inc. and about you being a host of the wide world of esports?
Oh, okay. Well, Claim Crazy is because I'm an insurance defense attorney. We basically write funny claim stories so that people will laugh. That's basically entertainment. And I'm a host of a internet TV show called The Wide World of Esports. And I got really interested in esports when I found out that it's one of the the biggest industries we have now. And I always like to be on the cutting edge. And so I've done everything I can to research esports, even though that's really the genre of 18 to 35-year-olds. And I'm a little bit older than that. So I thought, well, I'm going to learn everything I can. And so now I have this show called The Wide World of Esports. It's on every Wednesday at noon Hawaii time on the thinktech.hawaii.com internet network.
Okay, can you tell us where we can find you and your books?
Absolutely. My books are on everywhere that sells books online, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Writtendreams.com is my publisher. They have them as well. You can Google my name, Catherine M. Noor, Catherine Noor, with no E in the name. And you can find me all over the internet.
Thank you. And I'm sorry about the spelling of your name.
Oh, no problem at all. Everyone gets it wrong. And Queenie, thank you so much for letting me be here today.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, next we have Audrey Hurd. How you doing? How you doing?
Hello, hello, everybody. How's everybody doing this afternoon? I want to start by saying thanks, Queenie, for the opportunity and the platform that you created to give us a chance to share who we are and what we do.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. I'm Audrey Hurd. I am a serial author of about 10 plus books. I'm always writing. I think I get so creative. Sometimes I just write. So I love to write, but my writing was birthed from a place of pain. Over 20 years ago, a fire erupted in my home and I lost my son and my grandmother in the fire. I was the third person in the house, the only one who survived. So I started journaling and I started writing and birthed my first book, which is called Through the Fire. And so I mostly write about life experience. And I write about life happening, and sometimes we just make bad choices. And when we make those bad choices, sometimes we need to share how we came through it to help somebody else. So if somebody's listening and you made a bad choice, just give me a wave and say, yeah, that was me at one time, you know. So that's what I write about. So why do I write books? I write books because I want to help people. I want to help someone get past that place of pain, that place of discouragement. Life may be beating them up. So I write to help that person get to that next place. So that brings me to my most recent book. It is called The Vow. Put it up for you to see. The Vow is a part of my Working Women Win series. And so it's a journal and it's also a workbook. Everybody who's encountered it is like, this is work. It's not a journal, it's work. So I help you do some of the work as a woman to start recovering from poor choices, you know, bad relationships, and just make personal vows to yourself in certain areas of your life in order to find wholeness and completeness in those areas. So I do want to share one of the vows with you. And that particular vow is vow number 5, and it is, I vow to seek God's permission for who can handle my heart. I will seek him first concerning the matters of my heart. And just to share a little bit more from the book, it's part, I share stories, and then it's part of doing some of the work. And so the heart is such a delicate, intricate part of our temple. God created it for good things and not for abuse. Have you ever been in a relationship with someone, whether male or female, and realized that your heart was hanging on a thread? Have you ever been in a relationship that your heart was handled so well that it just blew your mind? I've been on both ends of the spectrum, and it felt good to be handled right and not abused. Then there were times that the abuse ran so deep, it was affecting other areas of my being. When I was married to my ex-husband, there was no worse feeling in the world knowing that I couldn't share my most intimate spaces, my insecurities, my idiosyncrasies. I couldn't share those things with him. When I was married to him, truth is, my self-esteem, it was very low, extremely low. That's why I married him, because I had low self-esteem. If I had been in my right mind, how many know when you're in your right mind, you make better choices, right? But if I had been in my right mind, I would have saw him coming a mile off, y'all. I would not have married him, okay? I would not have allowed him to feed me a bunch of lies, all for the sake of marriage. So those are some of the things I share in the book. The particular activity for that chapter is to write 10 issues of your heart. And issues of the heart are not all bad things. You could be a giver, and your giving could be abused. You could be someone who just loves people. And then you could be someone who allows yourself to be abused. Those are the issues of the heart. So I give you space to write about that in that particular part of the book. So that is who I am. My publishing company is IBG Publications. And we do help other aspiring authors. So when you reach me on social media, it's across all platforms, IBG Publications, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, it's all the same. And also on my website, you can reach me at ibgpublications.com. So that's who I am.
Okay. Can you give us 3 signs of a toxic relationship?
Absolutely. The first sign of a toxic relationship is someone who does not have the ability to help you move forward in life. They are someone who keeps you stagnated. They don't understand or know who you are, and they can't help you grow. So you tested me on my book, Miss Queen. You tested me on my book. So that is one of the signs of a toxic relationship. Another sign is they sabotage your success. You're trying to get ahead, you're trying to move forward in life, and they can find every single reason why you can't get ahead. Oh, it costs too much money. Oh, you're not good enough. Oh, you don't have enough skill. You didn't go to school for that. How can you do that? So that's another sign of a toxic relationship. They sabotage your success. And another sign of a toxic relationship is you're not on an equal playing field, or you're not really on the same level, meaning that it's not so much as educational wise, but just you bring a whole lot to the table, but they're just sucking you dry. They're taking everything from you. They're juicing you for all you have and not giving you back the same thing that you're giving out, which means you're not on an equal playing field. So those are 3 signs of a toxic relationship.
Okay. How has journaling helped you through your life storms?
I journal every single day. It has helped me so much, especially with what I went through with the fire. It was journaling that got me through those moments where, I did want to commit suicide. I really didn't want to be here. I didn't have enough guts to take my life, but if somebody came and put a gun to my head at any moment, it would have been okay with me. So it was the journaling that helped get me through those moments and gave me an outlet, because when we hold everything inside, and don't get it out, that is what journaling did for me. It gave me the opportunity to get out my thoughts, because sometimes we can have a lot going on in here, but writing it down helps get all that out.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Onyx King, you are next. Can you tell us about yourself, your books, and where we can find you and your books?
Hi, my name is Onyx. Actually, my legal name is Antoinette. And Onyx came from my grandmother. Everybody always teased me about being so dark. And she took me to a jewelry store and showed me all these beautiful pieces of jewelry with a black stone in it. And I said, Mama, what is that? And she said that stone is called an onyx, and you're as precious to me as that jewelry will be to the people who buy it. So I'm 51 years old today, and I've been called Onyx ever since. And I was a little girl then. My book, and everybody's talking about COVID-19, and they don't like it to be, they don't like to be in quarantine, because of it. But my latest book, I have written several books, actually. Several. But, excuse me. But my latest book is called Pandemic. Pandemic came to me because both me and my fiance contracted COVID-19. I was hospitalized for 8 days and he was hospitalized for 20 days. Now, Audrea, I really liked what you said about journaling. I can tell you in all honesty, that's what started me writing in the first place. The Girl That Glows is my life story. And as a child, I actually lived in a cage. And I was sexually abused, physically abused, emotionally abused. talk about domestic violence in this book. I talk about poor choices. I married a drug dealer and I was received 30 years in prison. I ended up doing 22. And I really thought that life for me was over. My self-esteem was just lower than anybody's you can imagine. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful. I'm actually grateful for catching COVID-19 with my fiance. It put us on a whole nother level. The love that we have for each other. We know how to appreciate each other and we learn how to appreciate other things. And I received the opportunity of allowing him to really love me. That is something that I never had done before. I didn't love myself. I didn't think anything of myself. And the girl that glows came because a lot of times I could talk in my mind about things I could never say it out loud. Or I thought I was too ugly, I was too black, or I was too fat, and nobody wanted to hear what I had to say. So I didn't say it out loud, but I would journal about it. I would write about it. And that happened. And that helped me through when I came home from the hospital. My fiance was still in ICU, and I thought he was going to die. And my journaling helped me because I began to talk about the feelings that I had with him being there, how it felt for me to really find true love. And I was like, God, you gave him to me after all this time. I was in prison all that time. I came home, I've been by myself, and you gave me this man, and now you're going to take him away. And isolation for this quarantine was awful. And I had just got out of the hospital myself, knowing my fiance is still in the hospital and thinking he's really going to die. But I am trying to get better myself. It was so hard. But journaling is what helped bring me through that. And then I started meeting other people and they started asking me, well, what made you go to the hospital in the first place? Girl, tell me about COVID-19. I hear stories about it, but I don't really know. Well, that is how pandemic was born. Mm-hmm. I said, I need to write something that talks about what actually sent me to the hospital. What does it really feel like to be sick like that? What does that mean? What does it feel like to finally think your significant other is the one for you, but then knowing he's in the hospital with that horrible disease, thinking he's really going to die? What does that feel like? So those are a lot of questions that I was asked. How did you get better? What happened? Where was God in all this? You say you're super saved now. Where did you find God in all this? All those questions came up and pandemic was born. And because I answered those questions, those are hard questions. It is hard. I'm still trying to make it. I've been home from prison. It'll be 5 years on Christmas Eve. And being there for so long was so scary and so hard. But you know what? With God, and I know this now, with God, all things are possible. All things. I don't care how big they are, how little they are. All things are possible. And all the time, all those bad things that happened to me as a child, all those bad things. I mean, I literally lived in a cage, literally. And people think, well, it must have been somebody mean. No, it was my mother who put me in that cage. Okay? Though that's what hurts, okay? That's somebody who's supposed to protect me, right? Who's supposed to love me, right? Mm-hmm. And you know what? My journaling has helped me. So it's helped me in all of the books I have. And most of the time, the places that I write comes from the things I go through. Mm-hmm. A Basket of Lemons talked about, it's really deep. It talked about a really hard situation that I went through. Because what do you do when somebody gives you a bag full of lemons? Well, you make lemonade, right? That's what I think now. Well, you know what? To make lemonade, you need sugar. And nobody ever told me that. So that's how A Basket Full of Lemons was born. And journaling really does help. It does help me go through all the things. I'm telling you, I can't even imagine the things, or you can't imagine the things that I've gone through since being home from prison. When I came home, it was just amazing how things had changed. When I went to prison, cell phones were huge. They were car phones. You couldn't really carry them around. Now, little bitty kids have cell phones, and it's like amazing almost. So that's me and why I'm writing. That's a little bit about Onyx.
Okay, would you like to read?
Yes, I'd like to read some Pandemic.
Okay.
Let's see. Pandemic. Okay, I'm gonna start. This is how it starts. Actually, it's actually chapter 2. It talks a little bit how it started when I went to the hospital, and it begins. The bright shining sun woke me up out of a fit-filled sleep. The first thing that I noticed before I even opened my eyes is the fact that my throat is very scratchy. I'm a singer, so I hope I can fix this. Let me get up out of this bed so that I can make me some tea. As I began to walk down the stairs toward the kitchen, it was like my breath was snatched away with every step that I took. I had to sit down on the bottom step for like 10 minutes just to get myself together enough to walk into the kitchen. I walked into the kitchen to put on a pot of tea. I rest my hands on the edge of the sink. I've never been so exhausted in my whole life. And I just woke up. I make my tea and slowly began to pull myself back up the stairs. My best friend lives in Michigan. I speak to her on the phone several times every day. When I got back to the top of the stairs, I took out my phone to give Joy a call. The phone barely rang 2 times before she answered. The first sentence out of her mouth is, Onyx, you need to go to the hospital. I didn't get to say anything, and that's just a little bit of how my book is going. But that's how pandemic started, and that's where it is.
Okay. When writing The Girl That Glows, what do you want readers to take away from that book?
There are so many girls I can remember, and I see them every day that looks like I did when I was a little girl, that think, oh, I'm too black, I'm too fat, I'm not worth nothing, I'm ugly. I want every child, every girl, even the boys to know you are beautiful, because you know what? There is something about you that is beautiful. There's something about you that is so special. And in writing about all the bad things that happened to me, because it does sound terrible, but God gets the glory in the end, because in the end, the love of God is the glow that's inside of me. And that's what I want every girl to bring from that.
Okay. What have you learned about yourself as an author?
Oh, what have I learned? I've learned that writing is hard work. People think just picking up a pen and writing all the time, that's the part, that's the easy part, that's the hard part. But I'm gonna tell you, that's the easy part. I mean, I've written 7 books and they're all published. They're all online. But you know what? It's the marketing, it's the editing. All of that is the hard part.
Okay. And where can we find you and your books?
You can find my books. You can find Pandemic on Amazon. You can find The Girl That Glows. You can find A Basket Full of Lemons. You can find The Girl That Glows Part 2 all on lulu.com. My pen name is Onyx King. If you put in Pandemic by Onyx King on Amazon, you're going to find the books that go with Onyx King. If you put in The Girl That Glows by Onyx on lulu.com, you're going to find not only that book, but also the other books that coincide with Onyx King.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right, we have Kimberly Davis Peters. Tell us about yourself, your books, and where we can find you and your books.
Hi, well, thank you for having me. I'm Kimberly Davis Peters, and I live in Ohio. I'm a mom of a beautiful, amazing 4-year-old who's the inspiration of my work, and also I'm a wife of 5 years this month. To an amazing husband who I'm lucky and fortunate and always says yes to everything. So very happy to be here with you all. I am a children's author. I started writing children's books in 2019. And my first book is Ellie and the Rainy Day, fashioned after Ellie was created after my daughter, who's now 4. And so this book, it takes a typical day in the house with Ellie and her mom Ellie wakes up and she wants to play outside, but because of the rain. So she thinks that her day is ruined, and her mom steps in and comes up with some really creative ways to keep Ellie busy and entertained throughout the day. And when it's all said and done, at the end of the day, Ellie finds out that she actually did have a good day, even though it was rainy and unexpected. So this book is really a great tool to help kids understand that things are not always going to go your way, as we as adults know in life. But what matters is kind of how we react to things and finding alternative solutions to meet our needs. And sometimes we will find a fun adventure where we didn't expect one. So that's Ellie and the Rainy Day. It's a very short read, about 24 pages. And my recent book is, so this is my baby. My recent book just came out. It's called Cocoa, Tea, and Honey. And Onyx, your story is so powerful to me because this book is a really great tool for parents to start having conversations with our young ones about skin tone. Specifically, this book is a little girl who's a brown skin girl, and she's talking to her friends, which are brown skin girls. And what I want readers, parents, children to walk away from this book is to love their skin tone, no matter where you fall on the spectrum, no matter how light. As you can see in Ellie and the Rainy Day, my little girl is very, very light. And one of the things that sparked me down this journey was the fact that, you know, how are people going to react to her when she goes to school, when she goes out into the world, where she goes to places that I can't protect her, you know, from others, from, you know, the meanness and cruelness of the world. And sometimes, unfortunately, we as African Americans, we are guilty of saying, you're too light, you're too dark. And I think it can start early, and we don't realize that kids can be hurtful. And there are some things that kids can say that can stay with you for the rest of your life. So she's very light, and I worry about some of that with her. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you know, again, Onyx, your story speaks to me. I love your beautiful dark skin tone. And we have some folks who have heard things like you're too dark, or I know other, you know, previous generations prior to mine anyhow, the brown paper bag test, and how we see ourselves and how we see others, and, you know, what that does to our self-esteem and how we interact with people and how we feel about ourselves. So I wrote Cocoa, Tea, and Honey with that in mind to start. Like I said, it's a great tool for parents to start having a conversation of skin tone awareness, you know, with children. And one of the things I can say that really inspired me to start writing children's books is the fact that, again, I have a 4-year-old, and out of all the market of children's books, books that represent a main character that's African American represent 11% of that market. And we know that's not the way that the world, you know, we know that the world is made up very differently than that. So with my, you know, kind of always having some sort of writing background, I wanted to contribute to changing the narrative that we see in children's books. Okay, so I just want to read Cocoa, Tea, and Honey for you. This is also a short read, about 24 pages as well. Your brown is beautiful, and so is mine. Every brown is beautiful and one of a kind. Some shades are deep brown, like warm cocoa on a winter day. Our browns may be different, but we all like to play.
Yep.
Some shades are like honey, a light golden brown. Our browns may be different, but we can all spin fast on the merry-go-round. Some shades are soft brown, like the color of sweet tea. And our browns may be different, but you can jump rope with me. No matter the shade, brown is beautiful to me. It may be the color of cocoa, honey, or tea. From light brown to deep brown and everything in between. As long as you're kind, it doesn't matter to me. Our browns may be different or they might be the same. Each brown is unique in its own special way. But one thing I know that is true to the end, I will always be proud to call you my friend. And that was Cocoa, Honey, and Tea. Thank you.
Yes.
You can find my books on my website. It's elliesbookshop.com. That's ELLIES bookshop.com. Generally, these are great books for ages 2 through 6. And you can also follow me on Facebook and IG at author_KDP.
Okay. One question. What would you tell a child about colorism? How would you explain it?
Well, I would explain it like this. I would start, like I said, this is a great tool to spark a conversation about skin tone. So I would definitely utilize that. I would tell a child that their skin tone is beautiful. It doesn't make them any better than anyone. It doesn't make them any less than anyone. And what's most important is their character, how kind they are, how they show up in the world, and that they need to be confident because the world isn't always kind. And it's important that they love themselves and not to allow the world to change that in any way, shape, or form. So that would be the first conversation. And then I think it's important. I ask my little girl every day. She's 4, but I ask her, "How was your day?" And she tells me all these things. I drew today. I did this, I did that, and sometimes there are these little nuggets of information that I try to use to spark as a conversation. Last week, she said a friend didn't want to play with her and they don't like her. And so I use that as an opportunity to start having conversations of, sometimes children want to play with other people. It's okay to play by yourself so she can have self-confidence. So I think it's important to understand what's happening with your child when you're not there, and then use those opportunities to impart wisdom.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right. April Thomas, tell us about yourself, your books, where we can find you and your books.
So my name is April Thomas, and I've been writing books and publishing since 2009. My website is aprilathomas.com. I also have all of my books on Amazon and Kobe, and I just opened it up to all the different platforms. So this is my first book. It's called Endurance, the Power Within. And originally I wrote this story when I was in middle school. And it's a book I wrote. It started about these runaways, but I wrote this series until I reached my freshman year of high school, and then I took a break because I didn't know enough about life, and I felt like my stories were kind of just it wasn't going anywhere. So I actually took a break from writing, and I didn't pick this up until I was about 33. And when I wrote Endurance, I wrote it pretty quick, I guess because the story always lived on in my heart. So it was just putting it down on paper. So it's a story about a girl named May, who her father passed away when she was young. He was murdered. The mother unknowingly turns around and marries the man that murdered her father. So May, her story is about endurance. She's a very quiet girl. She doesn't get in any trouble. She stays to herself. But she reaches a point where she has to get away from her stepfather. And it tells a story about what people go through in the physical world and also in the unseen world. What happens behind the scenes in our lives? I guess kind of like a bird's eye view or a heaven's view from what's really going on in our lives. And that's what you kind of walk away with Endurance, that she had to endure a lot. It turns out for her benefit, and it changed her a lot. But at the beginning of the book, she's very quiet, very humble. By the end of the book, she's mouthy. She finds her voice. So it's a good story. It's the first book in my series, and I have to date. This is Broken, the second book. And then I go into Spirit. And then Spirit was so big, I had to split it in half. So there's part 2. And then Apathy. This one is called Codex and the Being of Karma. And then the last book in the series is called Numinous. So I know I get asked a lot, like, what's my genre? What do I write about? When I wrote these books, I didn't really have a genre in mind. I just wrote. I just sat down and I called it throwing up on paper. And so I never had any that this is going to be a certain way. I never let my thoughts control how the story went and what direction it went in. I just wrote. And so it does have a lot of like spiritual warfare, but in a fictional sense. It has, I wouldn't say that it's religious, but it is that I talk about God and I talk about angels in this book. So it's different. It's a different book. I don't find a whole lot of books like it, but I believe that you got to write what you enjoy reading. So I couldn't find my favorite book, so I had to make it. So that's pretty much me and my books in a nutshell.
Would you like to read from one of your books?
Yeah, I'll actually read from Endurance. I'll read one of the part that I'm reading is something that I would actually have dreams about my books before I wrote them. So this is actually kind of like an image that came to me in a dream, and it became part of the book. Okay, so I'll just set it up a little bit. Basically, May, who escaped her stepfather, he captures her, and she's a young girl. She's a teenage pregnancy story. So he captures her and he has her in a abandoned warehouse. So that's where this scene starts. May sat in a dimly lit building, fighting the depths of unconsciousness. She was amazed that she hadn't passed out by now. Her strength had returned, and she lifted her head, looking up at Thomas. He stood smug, glaring down at her. Another contraction came, and May screamed in pain. Instinctively, she wanted to curl into the fetal position, but her arms had been tied behind her back. Her legs were tied to each leg of the chair. Blood from her head injury blinded her eyes. A dirty cloth was tied tightly around her mouth, causing the sides of her mouth to tear. Perfect timing. Soon I will bring your baby into the world and let you watch as I kill him. Then I'm going to kill you slowly, Thomas growled. He was unrecognizable. He looked like a madman. May began to cry. She knew something terrible was going to happen with meeting her mother for lunch. She believed that this was a setup from her mother. May never would think her mother could be capable of something like this. But what was she to think now? Why would Thomas snatch her from the same restaurant they were at? He had perfect timing, dragging her from the booth and shoving a gun in her side. May could only think about saving her baby at all costs. She had been beaten and tortured for hours. She knew if Max had known, he would have been here by now. May remembered something. I can communicate with him telepathically. Now that I feel stronger, she thought. May close. Oh, I'm sorry, I read that so wrong. I can communicate with him telepathically now that I feel stronger, she thought. May closed her eyes as she focused on Max. She could see him. He was terribly upset, and she began to call his name repeatedly in her mind. Max jumped and looked around. He knew he just heard me. So that's a little snippet. of my first book.
Okay. What is the rise of the underdog?
The rise of the underdog. Well, pretty much that sounded like Oprah in The Color Purple, like all my life. But all my life I had to fight. I pretty much, May is, my story is in May. My story's in a lot of characters in the book, but I felt like a lot of times this world or society will beat people down. And it's hard what, we're always made to look like either we're losers or, we'll never accomplish anything. We tend to be called the black sheep of the family. And I'm rooting for the underdog. I'm rooting for myself. I'm rooting for the underdog. That's why I chose the path that I went. It may not been the path of instant success, but to me, it's a path of staying on the right track and not crumbling other people in the process. So I'm interested in doing anything that rises up the underdog, that supports the underdog. Says, this world is trying to kill us. It's really trying to get rid of us. But I think that the whole thing with the underdog started with my last job and how it ended. And I just reached a point where I was sick of it. I was sick of being taken advantage of. I was sick of not being valued. And that's where that whole concept was born.
Okay. And of all your book covers are beautiful.
Thank you.
What do you think makes a great book cover?
Anything that captures it. For me, I look for things that capture me. I always look for images that kind of almost takes my breath away. So the interesting thing with Endurance is May is she's actually light-skinned. May is she's like half Chinese and half Black. But that I loved, the artist who did this, his name is Justin. He did this cover and I loved it. It took my breath away. It really spoke to the message of the story. I try not to, well, that's like a whole nother topic, but I love what this represented and what it meant for me. Because growing up, fair skin, light skin, and like with all our families, we have all shades under one roof. We have all shades, but I see it as a light skinned girl. I saw where my cousins would be treated differently on the outside. When we went outside to play, I saw where my cousins would be treated differently than I would. So I like to promote things that have darker skinned girls in it. That's more interesting to me because that's just important to me. I feel like I like to lift my brown skinned sisters up. So when he did this, I had no issue with it, even though she didn't look like how I put May in the book. That was fine with me. So, but yeah, anything that captures the eye, I'm interested in.
Thank you so much. All right, Ro Brady, can you tell us about yourself, your books, and where we can find you and your books?
Hey, Queenie. Thanks for having me on. I just want to tell you that I write under the name of Ro, R-O-E, instead of Ravina. I think it's a little bit easier to remember. I write in a couple of different genres. I started writing after I retired, after teaching for 25 years. I wrote a novella. It was called A Seat on the Playground. Wait a minute, let me do this. Turn off I got a busy background here. That better?
Yes.
Okay. I wrote this one, A Seat on the Playground, and it was my first book, and I wrote it after a death of one of my students. And I kept thinking about how I didn't want his life to go in vain. So I wrote that. I also wrote, I think it was, who was the children's book author? Kimberly?
Yes.
You were talking about that there were not a great deal of books that you found for children of color. I found that same thing for children living with disabilities. So I wrote a book, The Box of Marbles with the Royal Storyteller. So there's two versions of this book in the same book. The Box of Red Marbles is a story that it's more appropriate to tell in schools, but The Box of Red Marbles with the Royal Storyteller is a story within a story where we talk about King David and a little group of kids who they wanted to find out more about King David. And when they read the story, they found out about the Royal Storyteller, who was a individual living with a disability, and how he wanted to go and read stories to the king, but because of his disability, he didn't think he would be able to. So this actually now comes with a teacher's guide teaching kids about diversity. So I've written a couple different things, but my newest is A Warm Heart of Steel. And I wrote that almost a year ago. Basically, I wrote it about the Hill District of Pittsburgh. It's a very historical part of Pittsburgh. Right after King died in 1968, there was a riot there, a race riot. And it's really, really the stories that my parents used to tell me when I'd sit at the dining room table. They would tell me about sitting around and listening to the speeches of King or Kennedy. And they were the most romantic couple that I ever knew. You know how when you're a little kid and your parents are just so in love with each other, they'd come into the room and they'd kiss each other and you'd go, yuck. Well, my parents did that all the time, but they would tell me these stories. And when they tell me these stories, I always thought, yeah, okay, Dad, sure, that's a great story. But as I grew older, I realized that they had really lived through history. So I started to really appreciate those stories. So my mother got very, very ill. She came to live with us. She still lived in Pittsburgh in the house I grew up in. And she would sit, and she had Alzheimer's. So eventually her memory faded, but before it faded, we would sit every day, and she would tell me these stories about growing up in the country, not having running water. And as a child, her mother dropped her off at her grandmother and left her, and she didn't see her until years later. And she had two other sisters, and her sisters, they grew up in this tiny little house in the country. They didn't have running water, and she would go down to the creek where they had to get water from a little creek with a wooden bucket, and there were water moccasins in there. So she would tell me the story, and all of a sudden I realized, man, this would make a great novel. So the novel really starts off about the riots in 1968, about a week after King died, but it really is a romantic story because it's about the story of my parents. You can get all my books on Amazon.com, but you can also get them on my website, which is Roebraddy, ROEBRADDY Productions.com. I don't know if you guys can see, that's probably too small, but you can also like me on Facebook at Roebraddy Productions. Queenie, I can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
Can you tell us more about Breathe Book Club and how was it inspired?
Oh, yeah, sure. Back in July, I spoke to the local school district. I worked at a very large suburban school district before I retired. They had a school board meeting back in July. One of the issues that I had always tried to address while I taught there was the lack of diversity in the history in the English curriculum. So I spoke with them and I told them, I said, I know that you're putting out a fire with COVID and school looks a lot different than it did the year before. But I said, and a lot of the kids here in Harrisburg were going to a lot of those protests that we were having. And I told them, I said, well, I really, really do believe that you really have to start focusing on the lack of diversity, especially in your English department. And I told them one of the things that I really would love to see is kids reading more of the diverse literature that African Americans have written. But what I wanted to do is create a platform, not just for well-established authors, but also emerging authors like us. So it's called Breathe. It's Black Readers Elevate, Appreciate, Treasure, Honor, Educate Black Literature. I actually had a t-shirt made. And we have not started yet. Launch date is October the 1st. It's going to meet every first Thursday of the month. We'll meet from 7 to 9. And if anybody would like to join, I would really, really welcome that. And you can reach out to me at rowbradyproductions.com to find out more. But I'm hopeful that what I can eventually do is to get this program into schools as something extra, having kids just tune in and listen to some of the stories that we're going to read. Our first author is a local author here, and actually she's an amazing poet. I'm also part of the Writers Workshop, and it's a forum where writers come, and we used to meet at this amazing bookstore, but now with COVID, we're meeting on Zoom, and I'm really, really prayerful that I can connect this with schools and get kids to tune in and start to understand that, you know, what you read in school is not the only literature that counts for something.
Okay. Is there a sequel to Warm Heart of Steel? And if so, what is the title and what is it about?
Well, see, I've got a couple of projects going on over here. I don't want to spoil anything, but I am writing a novella that will accompany A Warm Heart of Steel. In the book, I talk about this Murder Creek. I'm going to tell you what happened at the Murder Creek and why Murder Creek is so significant to A Warm Heart of Steel. And the book, A Warm Heart of Steel, has a play on words, because if you know anything about Pittsburgh, I guess maybe in the late 40s, was the largest production city for steel. My father worked in the steel mill for over 25 years. So in that story, I talked about A Warm Heart of Steel, basically the steel mill, but he was just this warm, compassionate guy. So it is really a love story of my parents. There's a little play on words.
Okay.
Yeah, but the sequel will be called Scarred.
Oh.
So, yeah, Scarred.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Next, we have Kimberly Bachelor Davis. Miss Kim, how are you? Tell us about you and your books and where we can find you in your books.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you, Queenie, for allowing me to be on this very honorable panel. To all the authors that are here, it's great to hear all of your stories. It seems like storytelling is very similar. So my first book, I'm an author, playwright, podcaster. I am a lifestyle editor for 2 radio shows, the Michael Van Tool Show and Community Highlights with missionary Hattie Humphrey. My first book is a children's book, and it's called Rose and the Enchanted 7. And it was intentional that I wanted to create a princess story. It's an adaptation of Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs with a little Black girl on the front of the book, because I wanted us to see ourselves as princesses, not just as the secondary character in a book. And Rose and the Enchanted 7 is my first book that I independently published. And it is set in the ancient kingdom of Detroit, which is my hometown. And it is set in the Manugian Castle, which is where our mayor lives. So it is very Detroit centric, but it is really a love affair for Detroit and for Black kids, specifically little girls, to see themselves. And this is a chapter book. It is very much a reader book. Like so many of you have said, Kimberly talked about skin color, and Onyx talked about skin color, and April talked about skin color. I created Look Daddy, There's a Bunny, because I am a mom of 2 dynamic young boys. One is about to become a teenager, so please pray for me. Today is actually my wedding anniversary. I've been married to my husband for 23 years. And when we had our sons, I could not find a book that represented them. And I remember being frustrated. And as a community activist, I thought, you're an author, solve your own problem. And so I wrote a book entitled Look Daddy, There's a Bunny. It is a very cute picture book that has very colorful pictures in it. And what it shows you is a dad walking with his two sons through a neighborhood without the things that we normally see on television, where they say that, you know, we don't have families or we're surrounded by crime, and they get to interact with animals. And so it's picture identification, it shows the bonding of family, and it is a awesome story for young kids, especially early readers. I tell people that at the age of 2 is a book that you can start with and just doing picture identification. My third book is called Conquering the Darkness, The Triumph Over Depression. As a wife and mom, I experienced postpartum depression when I had my second son. I did not realize that that's what it was. I just thought I was tired. It turned into more than that. And I was angry because as a woman, that is something that we don't talk about. And one of my missions is that no woman should have to suffer. If this is my story, I'm going to share it. I do that on my podcast as a community platform to share issues on mental health, entertainment, business, culture, writing, and motherhood. My favorite of my 6 books is this trilogy. So it's Escape to Paradise 1, Escape to Paradise 2, and Escape to Paradise 3. Everyone who knows me knows that I talk about having my own private island and having my own tropical vacation. And one of the things that I wanted to write about, I wanted to encourage people who were going through depression and put it in a fictional story. And I thought about, as women, one of the things that we do very well, we multitask, we take care of our children, we take care of our husbands, and we take care of everyone around us except for ourselves. And oftentimes we fall apart and we go to our girlfriends, or, you know, we end up in the hospital with heart disease, diabetes, stroke, something. But it's always because we put ourselves last. I took all of that and put it into a story where you have 2 sisters. The younger sister is going through postpartum depression. The older sister, who is more successful as an attorney, has all the things that you would want to in life, has this huge home, and her younger sister is literally wrecking it because she's wrecking her life. Throughout this story, though, the older sister finds love. And oftentimes things happen in life, we find love or something good happens to us and we have a choice. And I apologize, I don't remember who talked about when we make bad choices or choices, I think that was Audra. When we have choices that happen, sometimes we make the personal sacrifice. I don't necessarily believe that we should personally sacrifice our own happiness and joy for the benefit of others, as long as it's not hurtful to them. And sometimes, especially as Black women, we sacrifice ourselves to the bone for our families. And at the end of the day, we have nothing to show for it. And in this story, you see my main character, her name is Mia. She meets this fabulous brother who has his own jet. He owns his own villa on St. Thomas, and he is not broke. They are not struggling. This is a story really about dealing with what happens when one person wants to lean into a family issue and the other person says, well, I make enough money, I'll just throw money at it. How do you do that? And so over the course of 3 books, we get to see how their love grows and develops. And we get to see if by the 3rd book, if Mia decides that love is something that she truly wants. My books can be found at kimbdavis.com. You can also find me on amazon.com. You can find my podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other platforms as well.
Okay. Can you what inspired you to start writing children's books?
So I've been a writer since I was a kid. I was the kid who wrote on their front porch with her girlfriends, and then we would play dolls afterwards and interact our stories out. I also thought and falsely believed that when you grow up that you're supposed to put childish things away. So I stopped writing. When 9/11 happened, I was in downtown Detroit on the 17th floor of a building, and this is a true story. The executive director of our company, we had 3 floors. He pulled us into the conference room on the 19th floor that was full of glass where we thought there was a plane coming to hit GM. And he said, we're going to stay here and we're going to show the terrorists that we are not afraid of them. And I thought, are you kidding me? I want to go home and be with my family because this may be the last day that I have on earth. And I prayed to God that day that if you let me live, whatever I'm supposed to do, I will do it. My father was an attorney. I thought I was supposed to go to law school because everybody told me I was supposed to go to law school. I did not want to. And I said, God, tell me what I'm supposed to do. And he told me that I was supposed to start writing again. And that's what I did. And I haven't stopped.
Okay. Would you like to read a snippet from your book?
I would. So this is from the first book. This is from Escape to Paradise 1. And this is part of the drama that you see with the younger sister. Her name is Lisa and her husband, Marcus. Lisa burned with anger and resentment while she struggled to pick up the crystal-leaded glass vase. Mia ran towards her. She threw her hands up. Lisa grabbed Mia by her pink sweatshirt and pushed her back. She fell back onto her buttery soft gray leather couch. The glass table moved to the left under Mia's fall. She smoothed her pink sweatsuit down. Lisa stumbled forward. She clearly tripped over the large oval glass table. Mia grabbed a charcoal gray love seat, which broke her fall. Mia pushed herself forward and she grabbed Lisa. No, not Mom's vase. Please, Lisa, Mia pleaded. That's our family heirloom. Stop using my stuff to hurt your husband. He deserves it, Lisa cried. This is my house, not yours. You have no right to break things in here, Mia explained. The vase teetered in Lisa's grasp. Marcus walked out the front door. Lisa, I've had enough. I'm out, he sneered as he turned and walked out. Marcus pulled the front door open and he walked outside to the front lawn.
Miss Kimber?
Sparkled across the grass. Mia's dog Bailey, a blonde and white Akita, barked furiously from the hallway. Mia shook her head in anger. Marcus turned back towards Lisa. Are you crazy? Lisa said, damn it, what's wrong with you? Think about your son. Mia shouted, stop. Are you crazy? Our son is right over there, Marcus growled as he stood outside near the front lawn. No, don't tell me where my son is, Lisa screamed. I know where he is. What do you know anyway? You have no job, no money, nothing, just useless. The real question is, why are you cheating with that hooker? I can't say the word that I put in here. Mia grabbed Lisa. She shook her and slapped Lisa hard across her face. Snap out of it, Mia shouted. Lisa's 11-month-old son, Jackson, sat on the oversized gray leather chair next to the window. Tears poured from his eyes. Mommy, Mommy, he cried. She turned towards Jackson, her nephew. She walked over to him. Shh, it's okay, baby, Mia sang as she reached her arms out to him. Jackson climbed into her arms and laid his head down on her shoulder. Mia rocked him and bounced him up and down. He screamed and cried at the top of his lungs. Tears poured down Lisa's face. I just need a few minutes to get it together. Outside on the front lawn, Marcus shouted to Mia, who was still inside with Jackson. Mia, I told you your sister was crazy. Marcus, just go. Lisa needs to cool off.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Miss Rowe, I didn't let you read a snippet. Would you like to read a snippet from one of your books? I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. I'll do something short. I'll read you from the very beginning. It's how they meet. It's 1968. Miles Davis was the headliner on the night they met. Matthias noticed Nezzy at the minute she came over to the bar to pick up her order. He sat at the bar wearing his heavy blue work shirt and steel-toed boots. Not exactly appropriate attire for the Copper Pipe Lounge. Mike, the bartender, noticing the server standing there, turned and asked, Hey, Nezzy, what you need? She glanced over to where Matthias was sitting. He was quietly tapping his fingers on the bar to the music that was playing in the background. He said, Hi. She hesitated, giving him a once-over, then said, "Hi, excuse me, Mike, I need a rum and coke and a gin and tonic." "Okay, give me a minute." In a few minutes, her drinks were ready. As she picked them up from the bar, she turned and gave Matthias another glance. She thought to herself, "Handsome guy. Too bad he knows nothing about dressing for a club, but at least he's working." Nezzy seductively glided back to the waiting customers. Mesmerized, Matthias followed her with his eyes. She was a slender woman with high cheekbones and the color skinned of black coffee with a hint of cream. She wore her hair in a wave set with a gardenia tucked behind her left ear, and her black uniform snugly fitting every curve of her body. As she rounded the table and bent down to deliver the final drinks, Matthias quickly glanced at a hint of cleavage. Catching his breath, he silently asked the Lord for forgiveness for which his mind had begun to travel, but his eyes never left her as she moved from table to table.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All righty. We now have Christy Taylor. Christy, tell us about yourself, your books, and where we can find you in your books.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christy Taylor. I am a Baltimore City public school teacher. I have been writing since I was little, but I've been published since 2013. I currently have 7 novels published, 2 different series, and I'm working on 3 different works right now. And I also have a journal line that I started at the beginning of the pandemic, and I now have 70 journals released. The first series that I started back in 2013 is Being Yours. I write interracial contemporary romance, and it's the series Being Yours. I have the first 2 books out. The third one comes out in 2021. It's the story of a woman named Logan Reed who leaves her husband, Christopher, because he's verbally and physically and emotionally abusive. He tries to kill her and leaves her for dead in their kitchen, where her 7-year-old son, finds her, and she decides in that moment that it's time for her to leave. So she takes her son Carter, she empties out her bank account, and in one duffel bag goes to the Greyhound, and goes to Wake Forest, North Carolina, where she starts over. It's the story of beginning again, finding love, accepting the mistakes you've made in the past, and learning to move forward. While she's in North Carolina, she meets this good old country boy, this really hot man named Jackson Sparrow, who is a teacher at her son's school. And she ends up falling in love with him, but neglects to admit that she's married. And it's the story of her living again for herself as a woman in her 30s and overcoming everything she had to endure in the past. The second series that I'm writing I have the first 5 books out. One of the 3 books I'm working on now that's due out in 2021. That series is called A Winter's Tale. And this is the first one, A Winter's Kiss. It's interracial romance. This is the second book in the series, A Winter's Promise. Then I have A Winter's Vow. Then there's A Winter's Secret, and then A Winter's Seduction. The last 3 books in that series, A Winter's Deception, A Winter's Embrace, and A Winter's End, all come out between February 2021 and June 2021. And this series is about a woman named Charlotte Toutant. She walks in on her younger sister having sex with her fiance and finds out that her parents knew about the affair and never told her about it. And so she leaves her family, she leaves everything and moves to New York and starts over. And again, that's a story about a woman, leaving the things behind that hurt her to start over again. It's 8 books in the series. It starts off with her journey of, starting anew. I love the whole idea of starting anew because as women, we get so caught up in what's expected of us that we don't think it's okay to start over. And we have more commitment to people, if they're family, friends, loved ones, even if they're hurting us, than we do for ourselves. And so I love the idea and the dynamic of women starting over, even if they're in their 30s or 40s or 50s. And so the story starts off with her going to New York, and she ends up falling in love with her boss, and who becomes her best friend. And so it's their journey together over 8 books. So, Queenie, would you mind if I shared some of my journal covers?
I was just about to ask you.
Okay, as I mentioned, I have 70 journals out, but I just wanted to share a few. I had took my camera off because, as some of you beautiful women were speaking, and you said you like journaling, I thought, okay, some of these journals may really stand out to you, Miss Heard and April and Kimberly. So hopefully there's something that you like. But this is it's an inspirational journal. And on the front, it reads, "She loves the Lord with all her heart. She is blessed and highly favored. She is renewed and restored. She has been delivered from sin and shame, and wisdom flows through her." So as you were reading that, Miss Heard, I thought, well, I think she would like that one, but that's one of them. I have another one. In the end, we only regret the chances we didn't take. And on the back is Imagine. And then I have a culture line of journals. Because when I was going to Burlington Coat Factory and Target and Walmart, I didn't see any journals that represented me as a woman of color. And I wanted to change that. And so I started a culture line. And on the back, it reads, a woman's inner strength and ability may be refreshed and restored by her culture. Mm-hmm. And then to add to that culture line, I have my Homeland journal from Mother Africa. And then my African Queen. Yes.
That's my favorite.
This girl's never giving up.
My favorite.
And then my Serenity journal. And all of my journals are 7 by 10, and they're free space. So wide lines and a lot of writing space. Then I have the I'm Such a Vibe. And some of them have inspirational messages at the top. Empower. Living in My Purpose, Unapologetically So. April, I thought of you when you were reading your book about May. Empower. Today is the perfect day to be happy. What's your superpower? I'm a woman. And then one for every author. I'm a writer. What's your superpower? So I wanted to share these journals. And I really, really love that all of you beautiful ladies shared your story with me. So if you could give your information to Queenie and she would give it to me, I would love to send all of you one of those journals, whichever one that you would like. I think that would be great. And, you guys can write more of your story down. And I think that would just be fabulous.
Okay. You didn't show the teacher journal.
I did not share I have a line of teacher journals and I did not share, but okay, this is a little messy because I'm an English teacher and I'm using it right now, but I'm an English teacher. What's your superpower? I have one for math, science, English. One, I'm a bold, Black, beautiful educator. I have that. Teacher vibes. It's for teachers right now because teachers are enduring a lot with COVID-19. And on every page, I have synonyms to describe teachers, 100 pages with 3 synonyms on each page to describe brilliant, beautiful, hardworking teachers. And all of my journals and all of my novels can be found at www.ChristyTaylor, KristyTaylor.store. So www.ChristyTaylor.store.
Would you like to read some novels?
Yes, please. I would like to read an excerpt from A Winter's Kiss, the first book in the A Winter's Tale series. As I said, she left home because she found out that her younger sister was sleeping with her fiance and her parents knew about it. What I failed to mention was around chapter 5, her mother calls and leaves her this heartbreaking message that her father is ill and she doesn't know how much longer he has left. Only for Charlotte to rush home and find out her mother was lying. She just wanted her back home for the holiday. And so Charlotte is there with Nicholas, her boss and now best friend, and she's navigating how to be the obedient, respectful daughter in her culture, in the Creole culture, but at the same time, really, really being angry because the people who are supposed to love her hurt her. And that's the worst type of hurt, when it's given to you by people you wouldn't even expect, the people that are supposed to protect you. And so I'm gonna read her sister who slept with her fiance has walked through the door, and she's 8 months pregnant and married to her ex-fiance, and Charlotte leaves out and they're at a local coffee shop in Baltimore, and she's having a conversation with Nick, her best friend, and I'm gonna read from there. Placing her small hands on either of the hot coffee mug that sat on the table in front of her, Charlotte closed her eyes as she inhaled the familiar aroma of Zeke's coffee shop. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and warm dessert soothed her senses, allowing her mind to sail away from the abyss that was intent on holding her captive. The depth of her hurt was not surface deep, was no longer the grave entity that it had once been, and for that she was elated. Still, to climb out of the suffocating void of despair without a ladder, a rope, or even a crutch left her feeling baffled about the past 13 months of torture she had inflicted on herself. Was it all for nothing, she wondered as she stared into her mug? The blackness found there caused a frown to knot above her brow. Do you know what's funny? She asked, looking up to meet Nicholas's gaze for the first time since they had arrived. Not waiting for a response, she continued, her big brown eyes fixed on his gray ones. The bitterness of black coffee is insulting. The fresher it is, the more bitter it tastes. Most people steer clear of it, she laughed softly, looking down once more. As humans, we have this innate need to desire the sweeter things in life, overly processed truths that aren't real, that aren't good for us, not natural, but still we prefer it because of that ingrained belief that sweeter is better, more enjoyable, more satisfying, all the while we are foolishly poisoning ourselves. Diverting her gaze, she turned her head away from him, hating her inability to stop the moisture that fell shamelessly down her flushed cheeks. Better to endure the bitterness of the unprocessed than the temporary satisfaction of forged sweetness, she whispered.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
What is your genre again, and what would you ever write in another genre?
Yes, I would write in another genre. I actually am beginning the process of writing in suspenseful romance and thriller. I changed my pen name only because over the last 8 years, as all of you ladies know, when you have a fan base, they have an expectation from you. And I became a little nervous with the ideas that God's been putting inside of me, only because I do have a wide fan base and they are used to contemporary interracial romance. And I was a little nervous, and I was speaking to some of my writer friends about it. And I just thought, I might be pushing the envelope with some of the works that I want to put out, because my fan base is so used to that contemporary interracial romance. So I decided a week ago to come up with a different pen name, Harper Gray. And so I will be writing that more Lifetime, like edgy thriller, people being murdered type of romance. So yes, I would, to answer your question, I would definitely write a different genre, and I'm excited about writing that genre.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Since this is the end, do anybody have anything else they would like to add before we close? Go ahead.
I didn't get a chance to say thank you. This has been a wonderful platform. It's also been a wonderful afternoon just to get together with women with like minds and like spirits. We all have different stories, but it's also, I just really thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity just to get to know each other and just to get to know there are other people out there that we're all doing the same thing. You know, it may be somehow different, and it is weird because you don't think there's nobody else like you and nobody understands what you're going through, but it's absolutely wonderful to know that there is. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I would also like to thank you. And there were so many just touching stories, and I would like to see Onyx's books made into movies. And you know, I hope that there's a movie executive listening today because there are a lot of fantastic stories.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, I enjoy meeting everybody as well. And thank you for this opportunity, Queen. And also, I forgot to say my books are also on Amazon as well. Sometimes when you rush for time, you leave out some facts. So I also have a couple movie trailers on my website as well. So, and they're on YouTube. So enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. Adrian?
I just want to say it's been refreshing hearing everyone's story and their motivation for what they do. And I'm looking forward to some ongoing relationships. I'd like to connect to some of the ladies here and do more sharing. So it's just been a delightful day for me.
All right. Thank you. Okay, everybody, I would like to say thank you for making this event successful. For the listeners out there, I hope you are paying attention and go out there and get their books. They're wonderful books. I've read most of them. So with that being said, and all minds are clear, have a great day. Bye, y'all.